Welcome to the Fast Leader Podcast, where we explore convenient yet effective shortcuts that will help you get ahead and move forward faster by becoming a better leader. And now, here's your host, customer and employee engagement expert, and certified emotional intelligence practitioner, Jim Rimbaugh.
Call Center Coach develops and unites the next generation of call center leaders. Through our e-learning and community, individuals gain knowledge and skills in the 6 core competencies that is the blueprint that develops high-performing call center leaders. Successful supervisors do not just happen. So go to callcentercoach.com to learn more about enrollment and download your copy of the Supervisor Success Path ebook now. Okay, Fast Leader Legion, today I'm excited because I have somebody on the show today that really is going to help with many organizations and their issues associated with doing something different. Eric Kish was born and raised in communist Romania in the early 60s and 70s. His father, a Romanian Navy officer trained by the Soviets as a rocket scientist, married Eric's mother while at a Navy academy in Baku, Azerbaijan, a republic of the Soviet Union at the time. He grew up surrounded by engineering, science, and military stories as his father became a pioneer of the power electronics industry in the 1970s. His father eventually defected to the United States in the mid-'80s, and immediately after, Eric emigrated to Israel with his mother and sister. Soon after, Eric joined the Israeli Defense Forces, serving in its armed corps. After completion of his active service tour, he started his career as an electrical engineer in the Israeli defense industry, while continuing to serve in the Israeli Defense Forces reserves. Eric is best known for his turnaround CEO career, transforming 12 companies across 3 continents in 22 years, 2 of them taken from millions to billions in revenue. He began his first turnaround in 1999, taking private a bankrupt oil refinery at a $7 million market cap and taking it public again 3 years later at a $450 million market cap. That turnaround was followed by 6 additional acquisitions and turnarounds that created the largest oil company in southeastern Europe. The company was acquired in 2008 for $3.8 billion. After transitioning the company to new owners, Eric decided to return to school. He enrolled in MIT's Sloan School of Business Executive Certificate Program, and while at MIT, he was accepted by Stanford Business School in their Master's in Business program, which he graduated from in 2012. In 2013, he joined the U.S. Association of Interim Executives, and as part of their rapid executive deployment team, led a number of additional turnarounds. In 2016, Eric decided to write his first book, Everyday Turnaround, The Art and Science of Daily Business Transformation. He was soon asked to create a workshop based on the methodology introduced by the book and to become a regular speaker for Vistage CEO peer groups. The workshop introduces the Business Navigation Framework, a practical framework to create highly adaptable and scalable organizations. Eric is currently CEO of FastCap Systems, a fast-growing developer of carbon nanotubes-based composite materials poised to disrupt large segments in the electronics components market. Throughout his life and career, Eric lived and worked in 11 countries and speaks fluently 6 languages. Eric currently lives in Boulder, Colorado with his wife and daughter, Alina and Maya. Eric Kish, are you ready to help us get over the hump?
Absolutely.
I'm glad you're here. And I'm really excited for our discussion because we had the opportunity to have a little bit of dialogue prior to going on the interview, and I think we're going to really have some fun. So now I've given our Legion a little bit about you, but can you tell us what your current passion is so that we can get to know you even better?
Sure. My current passion is studying adaptability in human organizations. In my 20 years of turning around businesses, I realized that more often than not, the reason for their distress situation is the inability to quickly adapt to changes in their business environment. I believe that with increased speed and uncertainty in our lives, the future belongs to the quickly adaptable.
Well, and when you say that, I can easily, in my mind and whatever I'm thinking in my lens and filter, I could think that, oh, well, you're talking about upgrading systems and technologies and processes. But that's not really what you're talking about, is it?
No, absolutely not. It's all about people and people's minds, okay? So what I call mental models. So the role of a turnaround leader is to change mental models. And for some magical reason, things fall into place almost by themselves if you do the right job.
So when you say the mental models, what are we really talking about? Because in the book, for example, you refer to a couple different things associated with friction.
Yep.
And having friction meetings and being able to address certain aspects of friction.
Yeah, so friction is something that happens in any organization. Friction I define as anything that feels weird or feels like it's not going smooth, okay? And it can be anything. It can be from lack of money to we don't know how to communicate well over email. Doesn't matter. Whatever feels like friction is what keeps your business from scaling and adapting. And you have to recognize that, and you have to find the root causes of that and systematically remove friction. And having the right mental models, first of all, is to discover that you have friction, to understand what's the root cause of that friction, and to come with creative plans and actions to remove the friction. That's what I mean by mental models.
Okay, and now when you start talking about friction, and for me, when I looked at it, it oftentimes when you go into a doctor's office, they talk about what is your pain level.
Yes. Okay, so actually, I measure everything I do, and I think everything is measurable. And if you cannot measure it, you cannot improve it. So I define the friction as something that it's like a pain feeling. Okay. And then we design a scale, 1 to 5, that describes your pain level. When you go to your doctor, that actually they have a pain level scale. They ask you on a scale of 1 to 5, how do you feel? And we said the same, and we described exactly what it means to be at a certain level of pain. And then we have on TVs in my company, at least on TVs, we see the graph of pain going up or going down, meaning we are doing a good job in removing friction.
Well, one of the things that I also liked about it is you took it to another level and looked at, what was the expected resolution time on these different levels of pain. And you really made it very clear so that it's, okay, if we recognize that we're having, a tolerable or distressful or severe, situation, what are we going to do about that? And and when do we expect to actually resolve it?
Yeah, so if it's level 5, it has to be done today, like now, okay? And we actually have what is called an emergency channel. When somebody posts what we call a bug in the system that is level 5 pain, everybody knows it. They receive a text message. So all the organization is immediately focused on that particular issue. If you're at a level 1, the expectation of solving that, of removing the friction, is like 90 days. So these are the two extremes. And when you pick the pain level, we already know what is expected in terms of timeline to fix that problem and remove the friction. And it makes it you basically surface pain, make it measurable, and you have your organization focused on removing systematically everyday friction.
So that gets into, I guess, the framework, talking about the everyday turnaround. And it's set up in 4 different quadrants. I mean, share with us what those are.
Sure. So the first one is strategic intent. I believe that everybody at every level of organization should have the same understanding of where we're heading. You should have the same answer to the question, who is buying from us and why? You should have the same understanding of why are we different. And also you should have a very good understanding of what do we need to do to deliver on our value proposition. And these things don't happen by, naturally. It's the leadership job to make sure that systematically you communicate what I call strategic intent. And when I say intent, intention is something that you should have in the back of your mind when you take decisions, everyday decisions, which means that if I did my job well as a leader, I can take a vacation of 1 month with no reception, and I can trust my people to take decisions in line of my intention because I did a good job communicating it. This is very similar to what we are taught in the Army. In the Army, we're taught that we are going to be given the commander's intent. And the commander will not tell us how to do the job, how to deliver the mission. They will just give us their intent. And obviously, before that, they trained you well enough to find the right tools and methods to deliver on the intent.
So then you have to actually go into the organizational design aspects of it.
Sure. So now the second discipline is what I call behavioral fit. Behavioral fit is finding, what do you need in your organization in terms of behavioral profiles? What is the behavioral profile of a role that you're trying to put in that organization, and then match people with that role. Because if you have people playing in behavioral comfort zones, they will be happier, more motivated, highly energized, and that's exactly what you're looking for in the bad times, because that's when you can stretch your organization. If you're naturally in a place of comfort in your behavior, you will spend much less energy to deliver the same goods.
So then that gets into the people aspects of the model.
That's the people aspect of the model. Then the next one, it's called tactical readiness. And tactical readiness is habits. It's basically habits of your organization to be adaptable. And these habits need to enable a couple of things. One is situational awareness. The second one is create opportunities to adapt. And the third is create opportunities to learn. Many people talk today about fail fast, fail cheap. That's the best learning method you can ever have, especially when you're going into unexplored territories. What you want to do is you want to fail fast and fail cheap. But you have to create the organizational rituals that capture the knowledge out of these experiments. And that's what I call tactical readiness.
And one of the things that you talk about in the book is that this particular model isn't necessarily for a startup per se. However, with the way that things are so rapidly at change, whether it's competitive landscape or whether it's technologies or whether it's consumer or customer expectations or even employee expectations, it seems to me like they would go from that startup phase to this everyday turnaround framework quite rapidly.
Oh, absolutely. Organizations are living animals. They're living things, and you hit inflection points very fast. And, you're a 5-people organization, is very familiar. Everybody sits in the same office, etc. All of a sudden, you have sales coming through the door, and you need to grow to 20. All of a sudden, friction goes up exponentially, right? So you already hit your first inflection point. Then you need to put manufacturing in place, the next inflection point, right? And again, friction does not grow in a linear manner. It grows like, I use usually the metaphor of the sound barrier. Up to the sound barrier, you can fly with, normal planes, and friction will go up linearly. All of a sudden, when you approach the sound barrier, friction goes almost vertically up, and it puts so much pressure on the frame that it breaks the frame. Therefore, you have to redesign completely the frame, okay? And this is what I'm talking about. When you're at an inflection point, you have to be able to adapt and learn from it very fast, because once you're going up, you'll crash.
Actually, going through and listening to you talk, looking at the book, looking at the model, I mean, it's, you talk about the culture and all of that, is that it seems to me that you can also have a situation where somebody, especially at a higher position or level of authority, is the one who's actually adding most of the friction to the organization.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And what you want to do, I test myself if I do a good job by taking vacations. And I forbid everybody or anybody to contact me. And by the way, they have the keys of the business when I leave. They can take decisions of millions of dollars. But I know that if I did my job well, if I communicated my intent, and if I prepared them for battle, they will take the right decisions without me. And one of the key things, I say, preparing is one thing, but the second thing that is not so obvious is when to get out of the way of your own organization. When should you recognize that now these guys can play without you? Okay, and you should do more strategic stuff than micromanage.
Most definitely. Well, talking about the friction, the transformation, the turnaround, all of those things. I mean, it is just loaded with emotion. And one of the things that we look at on the show are quotes to help kind of drive us and push us in a better direction. Is there a quote or two that you can share that you like?
Yeah, well, sure, and it comes from my past as tank commander. So I served in the Israeli Defense Forces in the Armored Corps, and I read a lot of military history. But one of my favorite quotes is, "Don't fight the battle if you don't gain anything by winning it," and that's from Erwin Rommel, the World War II German tanks commander. So I pick my battles very carefully.
So, I mean, even when you're talking about that, I have to go back to the whole friction thing. It seems like from a friction perspective, especially when you're going through, a tumultuous time, I mean, people could easily say that everything is friction. Everything is severe. I'm trying to fight every single battle. How do you prevent people from doing that?
Well, first of all, you force them to rank. Okay, so remember my pain levels. So you're forced to say, what is my pain level? And the moment you're starting to mentally think about the problem, you're now realizing that maybe it's not so important and other things are more important. And my job is to support the high value friction removal rather than low value friction removal. And that's where I put my efforts. And I cannot fight more than one or two battles at a time. It's just humanly impossible, and an organization cannot fight on three fronts or on two fronts. History showed that this doesn't work.
That's a very good point, because I often see that even in a startup scenario, especially when resources are strapped, and transitions. I mean, all of those are extremes where the anxiety and all of that is very high. Is that people don't go back to say, okay, let's fortify our defenses and try to actually mount an offense by focusing in on just one or two things instead of five.
Yeah, and one of the things that the leader has to do is he has to inspire confidence. Okay, so things fall apart all the time around you. Startups, you never know what's tomorrow. You're like living between heaven and hell every day. And you have to make the difference between what matters and what's not. And, in my military training, we had something like, if you're not sure, then attack. Okay? If you don't know exactly which one is the most important, then your first reaction should be to go on attack. Okay? Pick one thing and go forward with it. And for some magical reason, things will start, the universe will start conspiring for you, let's put it this way, okay? But you simply cannot fight many battles, and people cannot understand too many battles. Then it will become like, today, this is important, tomorrow this is important. They need to have an overall goal, which is what I call the strategic intent. Our intent is to do this, okay? I'm running now a company, and half of them are PhDs out of MIT, and very, very smart people, but they've never ran a company before. And my role is to teach them how this works. And it is very interesting how we have these discussions about, well, what is our overall goal? And they say, well, to create the greatest material in the world. And I say, well, I don't think so. I think our goal is high value exit, because this is what our investors are looking for, right? So let's start from how do we create value for shareholders, which, by the way, you are part of that because it's a startup. And then we will figure out what needs to be done to get a high valuation at exit, okay? And this kind of shifts their minds, and they understand now it's not only about the science, it's about how do you value the science, how do you make somebody come and have three bidders at the table bidding on the company and raising the value of the company.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because if it was just on doing what their first intent was, that's when you stay in school and just teach, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. True.
So looking at, your growing up in your childhood and your father defecting and, your emigration with your mother and your sister and starting your CEO career at an early age and all of these transitions and maneuvers, and I'm sure you had a lot of humps to get over. But is there a time where you've gotten over the hump that you can share?
I do. Actually, one of my biggest successes was turning around a refinery, a bankrupt refinery, back in 2001. With private equity money, I took private a refinery at $7 million market cap. Now, I have to just remind you that a new refinery is about $1 billion. But the reason the market cap was $7 million because the refinery was loaded with debt, had no inventory, and by the way, the market conditions were very bad. Refining businesses everywhere were losing money left and right, and refineries were closing one after the other. So nobody wanted to invest in this industry, and but then the assets were cheap. So, crazy people like us who thought that they know that they can turn around something, bought assets at a very low valuation. And then, I was sent there. I was 36 years old. I had very little experience in the oil business, by the way. So it's needless to say that the level of skepticism in the company when I arrived was very, very high. Okay, they basically gave me like 90 days to crash and burn. And but I realized very fast that knowing how to refine oil is not my job. There are enough people in the refinery who know how to do that. So my intent was to make money. Remember the exit? What I thought that my main job was, I entered in an organization that was formerly state-owned, kind of top-down, micromanaged. I'm talking about 4,000 people here, so it was not a small company. And then I realized that we will only be able to get out of this mess if we will put everybody's minds to work. And to put everybody's minds to work, you have to free their initiative. So there was a major cultural shift in 9 months. And then, the test moment happened. So 9 months into my job, we had to stop because all the permits in the refinery were expiring, and we had to do a revamp of all the installations. And we're about 10 days into this revamp, I'm getting a call that my biggest, most important installation, which is something that extracts sulfur out of gasoline, basically exploded under water pressure testing. So we're going there looking at this 20-feet tower, 20 stories tower, very, very high unit with a huge crack in it. And I'm basically lost. I have no idea what to do. 2 days of agonizing meetings, we realized that a new one would take about a year and a half to put up, and about maybe $3-4 million. We looked for secondhand ones, but nobody wanted to sell them to us because they wouldn't guarantee the steel. So basically, I was like, okay, we're going bankrupt. I have no no option here. This was like my biggest installation. And then I remember to this day, Monday morning, I come to the office and I see an engineer in front of my office, an engineer from maintenance. And he says, boss, I think I have an idea, but I have good news and bad news. Well, okay, give me the good news first. He says, I think I found a tower with a steel that we need in a refinery that it is being cut for scrap metal on the other side of the country. I said, great, why don't we go and see it? He says, yeah, that's where the bad news comes in. The scrap metal was bought by gypsies, which control the scrap metal trade in the region, and you have to negotiate with the tribal leader, which is called Buli Basha. And I'm like, okay, I'll do anything, right? I'm so desperate. So I fly there, I go to the basic rituals, we drink together, we smoke together, we talk about our lives together. And then eventually he says, I think you came here to buy that tower. So I want $200,000 for it. And, people expect to in that region to negotiate everything, so you cannot go with a sticker price. So I say, no, this is way too expensive. Remember, the new one cost like $3 million? So we start to negotiate, and then at some point he says, no, I understand you look like a very serious guy. I understand you don't like the price, but what if I give you two of them for $250,000? And I'm like, whoa, two of them would be like quadrupling my desulfurization capacity, which was unheard of in the entire region. Long story short, I pay the guy cash, $250,000, We rush these things into the refinery. 3 months later, one of them is up, goes perfectly in production. 2 months later, the second one is up. And long story short, we become the best refinery in the region, and we IPO at $450 million 3 years later. So now I'm telling people that actually a bunch of gypsies and one smart engineer saved my career, okay? But the lesson that I learned is that there is so much knowledge in a company that you go in, and you just have to release their minds, make them be able to speak up and make sure that they will be listened, okay? So that's a major cultural shift. And boy, what ideas these guys come with, they basically do the job for you, okay?
I think that's a really good point. That's a great story. So when you started talking about the timeline, and you talked about, you were actually not generating any revenue at the time, and then you had 90 days before that was installed. And so, how were you guys able to actually stay focused? And actually take care of the people who are working there? Because, for me, I'm like, you didn't have any money. You're already broke. How did that happen?
Well, you see, that's where the leader has to show confidence, okay? You cannot show that you don't, you're not confident in the future. You don't have to say you have the solution. You have to say, guys, it's never as bad as it looks like. Never as bad as it looks like. Let's come in and let's put our minds together and find whatever solution, whatever crazy solution you have. And my role as a leader is to support you in experimenting to find the right solution. Okay? So have the courage to come forward, and you will be supported and rewarded. Okay? So that's my role. And in the 90 days, we actually had to go back to our employees and say, we have to cut 30% of your wages overnight. And we had an instant strike, by the way. That was my first strike. I had like 1,000 people in my courtyard shouting at me. And I had 2 weeks of negotiations to convince them that we need to survive, and we cannot survive without their help. And they need to make sacrifices so they can save their jobs. And they did that, and then they were very well rewarded later on because most of them were also shareholders.
Oh, very good. And when I start thinking about that learning at such an early age and how it's carried you forward to what you're doing now, and to writing the book and helping so many other organizations with something that I feel is growing at an ever increasing rate. And what I mean by that is more and more organizations have not transitioned, and they're getting to the point to where it's getting to be crisis levels and their pain is being more severe. So I think, unfortunately, but fortunately for you, there's a lot of need in what you're actually teaching right now.
Oh, yes. And that's why I was kind of swept into this. The book I wrote because I felt the need to write it. But once I wrote the book, I got so many requests for, speaking engagements or workshops. I was just blown away how sensitive this issue is now in these days where the future is so uncertain and things move so fast around you.
So when you start thinking about all of these things that you have going on, and we talked a moment ago about you're having a lot of travel and just going all over the place and working with a lot of organizations. But if you had one goal, just one, what would it be?
Well, I'm currently running my 12th turnaround. It's very rewarding, but I believe it's my last one. I'm 54 years old. I believe now it's my time to teach. And I found out that I like to teach. So that's why I wrote my first book and I entered the speaker circuit. So my goal is to develop a practical body of knowledge that can be used in any company willing to survive and thrive in these turbulent times. That's my goal.
And the Fast Leader Legion wishes you the very best. Now, before we move on, let's get a quick word from our sponsor. An Even Better Place to Work is an easy-to-use solution that improves the empathy and emotional intelligence skills in everyone. It provides a continuous diagnostic on employee engagement and provides integrated activities that will improve the leadership and collaboration skills in everyone. This award-winning solution is guaranteed to create motivated, productive, and higher-performing employees that have great working relationships with their colleagues and your customers. To learn more about An Even Better Place to Work, visit beyondmorale.com/better. All right, here we go, Fast Leader Legion. It's time for the Hump Day Hoedown. Okay, Eric, the Hump Day Hoedown is the part of our show where you give us good insights fast. So I'm going to ask you several questions, and your job is to give us robust, yet rapid responses that are going to help us move onward and upward faster. Eric, Kish, are you ready to hoe down?
Yes, I am.
All right. So what do you think is holding you back from being an even better leader today?
Well, mostly patience. I'm a very impatient person, and over the years I learned that life is like surfing. You have to wait for the right wave to ride it on, right? So patience is what I work every day on.
What is the best leadership advice you have ever received?
This is the advice I got from the guy who hired me to do my first turnaround. He said, with money, everybody knows how to do it. Show me you can do it without asking for more money. In other words, use creativity and execution discipline to solve a problem instead of just throwing money at it.
What is one of your secrets that you believe contributes to your success?
Well, I preach and practice development of organizational adaptability. And once I'm done with it, the secret is to get out of the way of my own organization.
What do you feel is one of your best tools that helps you lead in business or life?
The best tool I ever learned, and unfortunately I didn't learn it at the business school, is behavioral science. I use specifically a tool called Predictive Index, and that helps me to understand behavioral drives and predict behavior of the people I lead.
And what would be one book that you'd recommend to our listeners? And it could be from any genre. Of course, we're going to put Everyday Turnaround on your show notes page as well.
Thank you. The book I warmly recommend is called Adapt, Why Success Always Starts with Failure by Tim Harford.
Okay, Fast Leader Legion, you can find links to that and other bonus information from today's show by going to fastleader.net/Eric Kish, and that's Kish. Okay, Eric, this is my last Hump Day Hoedown question. Imagine you were given the opportunity to go back to the age of 25, and you've been given the opportunity to take the knowledge and skills that you have now back with you, but you can't take everything back. You can only choose one. So what skill or piece of knowledge would you take back with you, and why?
I would absolutely choose the skill of understanding behavioral drives. It's a science and should be part of every leader's education from the very beginning. Unfortunately, it took me about 10 years to realize that. So,
Eric, it was an honor to spend time with you today. Can you please share with the Fast Leader Legion how they can connect with you?
Sure. I have a website called everydayturnaround.com, and my book is also available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and all the usual places.
Eric Kish, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom. The Fast Leader Legion honors you and thanks you for helping us get over the hump. Thank you for joining me on the Fast Leader Show today. For recaps, links from every show, special offers, and access to download and subscribe, if you haven't already, head on over to fastleader.net so we can help you move onward and upward faster.